All right, so after all of these technical difficulties, now I get to talk to you and say happy Labor Day to everybody. I am so extremely thrilled to be here. So, thank you for asking. Let me give you the update. So, last week I was on here and I was just so excited and pumped about the ubiquinol and my dad was just doing fabulous. His siblings came into town. I don't know if I told you guys all about that. He had three sisters and a brother fly into town. Three of them were from Seattle, one from Mississippi. They all flew into town to see him. They had prayed it up so that he was good and he was alert and he was talking and gregarious. And then they got in on Tuesday night. On Wednesday morning, he went out in emergency, ended up in the ICU unit, and another UTI, urinary tract infection. And so we were visiting him, two people in at a time in the ICU unit on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then Saturday, he shipped back out to another spot. Hey, Regis, blessings to you. He shipped back out to another spot, and so they got a chance to spend Saturday with him. And so we've got to start all over again. We'll be starting off from, I don't want to say from ground zero, but we're starting all over again. So it's all good. It's all good. And I'm just excited about knowing that we have options. And part of that is what I want to weave into my talk today as I come to you guys after leaving him in the hospital. I want to kind of weave that a little bit into the talk about the things that we know and the things that we don't know, and how the things that we don't know are always there. So let's talk about that. Let me start off like I always like to, because I need to get my head on straight, get myself in order. Look at this. Isn't this fabulous? So, the introduction of A Course in Miracles, which is found right in the front of your book, nestled right behind the table of contents and right in front of the text. This is how it reads. It says that this is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The aim of the course is not to teach the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to your awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all encompassing can have no opposites. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Okay, so say it with me. Nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And, as I was saying that, I was thinking to myself all over again that this is not some selective course. Most of us like to think that, as course students, we've got some big, corner on the Course in Miracles and what we're doing. We like to think that, we are course students and everybody else is just doing something else. Us and them mentality. But the truth about it is that since this is a required course, everybody is on the course. Everybody is taking the course, just not everybody knows that we're taking the course. And when we see the lessons, or when we get the lessons of the Course in Miracles, we realize that, wow, this thing came to me to show me this other thing that I was supposed to learn here. So whatever it is, it's always something teaching us what we need to learn, showing us exactly what it is that we are here to learn. And so that's so wonderful. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing about the course. Today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about changing the conversation, because I realize that as I talk, as I'm learning, as I'm growing, there's a shift going on within me. I mean, within all of us, there's this shift that is occurring all the time. And it's funny because I sit there and I think to myself, as I listen, I listen sometimes and I'm not in the room. I listen over the radio, and whether I'm listening to you guys or whether I'm listening to people in general, I start thinking about this thing about the confusion that occurs. I hear so many teachings that wherever I go, people are saying one thing, but then they act as if another thing is true. So if we talk about the allness of God, and then we turn around and we talk about, what's going on in Syria or what's going on in different parts of the world, we talk about the allness, but then our actions and our conversation doesn't demonstrate that we recognize the allness no matter where we are, no matter what's going on, no matter who's involved, that there is an allness that nothing stands outside of this presence, this thing that we call God. So I kept thinking about it in how do we learn this stuff? It's amazing to me. One of my aunts were here. They're so wonderful, but they stay out in Seattle. And oh, I didn't hear your talk earlier. Okay, so all is well. Yeah, and the rest of the day. Okay, that's funny, Rita. So my aunts were here from Seattle, and it's so interesting because they came here, and as they came into town, they started talking about, well, we want to go and get, and they had a whole list of stuff that they wanted to go and buy at the store so that they can eat. Things that they never get in Seattle, Washington. And so they're rushing to the store first day here. I've got to go to the store and I've got to get pork skins, or they got to get, all this stuff that they had a list. They just wanted to eat it. And so I kept thinking to myself, like, oh, there are parts of this country where, they don't sell these things. I mean, there's parts of this country where they can't have all this unhealthy stuff, is basically what they were saying. The stuff that we don't want to eat anyway. And so, I kept, but then as I listened to them, on another hand, their conversation and what they talked about, the standard and the cost of living in Seattle is so much different than that of this here in Cleveland. Some of the stuff, I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, okay, now, is it regional? Do we go to some places and some places seem like we're on subsistence? Sure enough, Cleveland was, according to some study they did, one of the poorest big cities, probably in the top 5 still, one of the poorest big cities in the United States of America. And so here we may have a different mindset than people may have in Seattle, where it seems to be, the streets are paved with gold and flowing with milk and honey. I mean, I've been to Seattle, they're really not. But it may be a totally different mindset. And where you are may be a totally different mindset. But the truth is that if we talk about the allness of God, that there is nothing that stands outside of this, that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. All of it is within this thing called God. If that be true, then whether we're wherever we are, the same truth applies. And what's different is my take on it, my vantage point. And my vantage point might say that I've learned something different, but it's not the truth about what I know to be true. And so here's what I wanted to talk. I mean, all of this is what I want to talk about. But as I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, let me make this plain. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, we used to play this game called musical chairs. Anybody ever play that game? And for the most part, I see dating here in Cleveland, dating as in relationships, as in male-female relationships and all that stuff. It's a lot like musical chairs. It's as if somebody turns on the music and we all walk around these chairs. And the point of it is not to be the last man standing when the music stops and have no chair. So we're walking around all these chairs, and it's always one less than the actual number that's playing, so that one person is always left out. I don't know how many of you have been left out, but we've got a scarcity mentality that says that we can only have one winner, and that there is only so much to go around, so many seats available. And if you're not like fighting and struggling up against somebody to make sure you have a seat, then somebody will be left standing. Well, when we turn on a spiritual basis and look at life from that perspective, we get what we expect to get, right? But the truth of the matter is if you're not caught up in your littleness and you see the magnitude of it all, that all is provided for all. So, well, thanks, but stick with me for a minute, because we've learned this in so many different ways, so many different things that we've learned. Today, I was walking out the door. I was walking out the door and I got into, I've been driving a truck lately, a pickup truck, actually. It's a nice pickup truck, but a pickup truck nonetheless. And as I was pulling out of my yard, there was another pickup truck that was blocking my drive. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, why are they blocking my drive? No answer, but it's like, okay, they weren't moving. And so I decided I would inch up to the end of the drive so I could see why they were sitting there at the end of my drive. So when I got to the, midway point, there's a lady standing there. And so what she asked me was, is that pear tree that I see back there, is that your pear tree? And I started to say, well, the part that's hanging over into my yard is mine, but I didn't say anything. I said, no, it belongs to the house that's over there. And she was like, well, I would like to get some pears off of that tree. And what she wanted to do was to back her car up into my drive and shake the tree so she could get some pears. And I politely said to her, I haven't gotten my pears yet. So, no. As I drove off, I started thinking to myself, now this year, this is the same tree. I don't know if I tell you guys about this stuff all the time because I've lived in this house. The house that I'm staying in now was a house that I grew up in when I was a child. Um, my parents bought this house when I was not even a year old. And we moved away. We moved away when I was probably about 12. They never sold the house. And I moved back into this house when I was maybe about 30. So the people and the circumstances and all this stuff of the street is intimate to me. I know these people. I can remember when this tree was 40 years younger. I mean, even though it's not in my yard, I go out and I put down lime around the bottom of the tree every year. And I try my best to maintain the tree because the folks who are now there in the house are people who rent the house. And so they don't have this historical connection to the tree. They just complain about all the pears and the bees and all this other stuff about the tree. They complain about the tree when it's, and I take care of the tree. And yet and still, as I'm standing there and I'm talking to these people who are sitting there with this pickup truck, I'm thinking, I haven't gotten my pears off of the tree yet. So, no. And as I drove away, I was thinking to myself, it's not that I didn't want them to have pears. It was as if this scarcity thought came up into my mind that said if I said yes to them today to getting pears, then there might not be enough pears at a level at which I can reach for me to make my pear preserve, which is what I like to make every year. And so I kept thinking to myself, why is it that we have a tendency to fall into scarcity thinking mode, into that littleness mindset? And I don't know, this could just be me. You might live in a location where that is not the vibration of your area. But here, and I don't want to blame it on the people around me, I want to own my own stuff. But here, yes, that's what it says. The Bible does say that. And I don't have any problem giving. That's not my issue. It's after I've gotten mine, then I'll give. I don't mind after I get my pears. What has happened to me, which is what has happened in the past, because I've got another tree. I've also got this other mulberry tree in the yard. And when I tend to say to people that you can take some out of the tree, what they tend to do is that by the time I see what they've done, the tree is bare, which leaves nothing for anybody else to get. So without knowing somebody or without having any kind of way of assuring that they're not all gone, it becomes this thing of you take what you have and then you whatever's left over, people outside of this area then can come and get whatever it is that they like. But there are people over here, not just my house, it's the house itself, and then the lady on the other side and the guy across the street. We all pick off of the tree. And so give some pears. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for that. So I already said no. She'll check again next week, but I already said no to today, and that's fine. That's fine. So it becomes this thing of us trying to figure out about this, and me looking within myself about this whole scarcity mindset that we have. And no, they were probably hungry. No, 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 no. They weren't hungry. That's anyway. But I don't know if you guys, I don't know if your neighborhood is like that, where in this particular area, it was there are fruit trees all over the place. So there's a peach tree at the house diagonally across the street from me. There's an apple tree at the both houses across the street from me. There's a pear tree. I have a mulberry tree. There's another house a couple of doors down that has a cherry tree. And people do just go along and try to shake your tree so that they can get stuff. And it's not, if it was hungry, if they were hungry, they wouldn't be trying to shake the tree. They'd just go back there and get them a few pears in a bag and be done with it. But what they're trying to do is fill up their pickup with pears. That's a totally different thing. But it's okay. I mean, however we choose to do it. So it becomes this thing. So today I started talking about I was thinking about this whole idea about scarcity thoughts and how we go through this. I have I shared a story I think before, and it's been a while ago that I shared the story about a friend of mine who had taken me out to eat. And during the course of this meal, we were sitting there talking, and he's just ordering, ordering, ordering. So he's got the twin lobster tails, and he's got the steak, and I've got something else, and just an extravagant, expensive meal. And as I sat there eating, I started thinking about the bills that I needed to pay. And as I was thinking about the bills that I needed to pay, I was thinking to myself, like, this $200 meal could have went towards paying down on my electric bill, or it could have done this, or it could have done that. I'm practical like that. I don't know about how anybody else is, but for me, I'm never thinking about how about this, like, oh, I can just go out and spend all this money on this, that, or the other when I don't have the basics covered. So it's always like, let me cover the basics, and then from the excess, let me then do my thing. But it takes me back to this whole thing about this thing. It's like every decision you make stems from what you think you are and represents the value that you place upon yourself. So what I found is that a lot of times we're always giving, even when it's uncomfortable to give. I know for me, I've done this in the past. I have volunteered, I have given of myself, I've given things, given. I'm a giver by nature. That's who I am. But if I'm not first taking for myself, then what am I really doing? Case in point, yesterday at a cookout, I'm talking to a woman, and we're talking about healing work. We're talking about spirituality. We're talking about all of these things and how it works. And then she says that she hasn't yet learned how to do healing work or do her spiritual work without herself feeling depleted. And immediately I could say to her, wow, if you feel like it's depleting you, you're not doing what's true and what's right for you. Because this stuff is not something that comes from us, but rather through us. We're simply conduits. And if we're a conduit, if we're being an effective conduit, it should lift us rather than deplete us. And so I'm always making decisions based on what's good for self. Man is generous out of his own self interest. And a lot of times we're not self interested enough. The other day, I posted a quote on the board on my Facebook page from the dear, what is her name? Maya Angelou. And she says in her quote, she says, I do not trust people who do not love themselves and yet tell me I love you. There's an African saying which says, be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt. It's like, if we haven't yet learned how to receive love, how can we then give love? Or how can we give a play from a place where we haven't accepted it for ourselves? The truth is that God is ever present. That is the only activity that is going on in this universe. There is nothing else, right? And as we know that from that space, if we're busy trying to give something or extend something that we have not yet accepted for self, then what is it exactly that we're giving? We can't give anybody anything. There is nothing to give. It is already all ours. But there is a part of us that doesn't recognize the fullness that's already there. So it becomes this thing of not trying to give somebody something that you haven't already accepted for oneself. And so I kept thinking from the standpoint of that dinner and that meal that I was taking in, but yet in my mind I couldn't enjoy it because I was so busy thinking about what I didn't have. On the other hand, I'm sitting here eating this extravagant meal, and for some of you guys that wasn't even extravagant. I mean, some of you guys go out and drop 200-300 on a meal, and it's no big deal. But for me, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, there was so many other things I could have done with what we spent in just that hour and a half. There was so many other things that I could have thought to do that I was stuck. So I couldn't even enjoy where I was. And so it becomes this thing of what is it? What is it that I am really like trying to like harness? What is it that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to get to a place, and I think we all need to get to a place where we're really starting to change around the way we see things and the way we operate. I'm so busy um, trying to find peace within Sandra, recognizing the peace that is mine. I'm not worried about what other people are thinking about my pursuit of peace, my pursuit of happiness. I loved on the other day when they did the March on Washington and the MLK celebration, how one of the things they talked about was in the beginning, the way we started out our Constitution is that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does it mean to pursue happiness for self? Is it simply about trying to make somebody else happy, trying to conform to somebody else's thoughts or ideas? We're all taking the course. If this is really a course that we're walking, our life being a course in miracles, if we're really taking this course and we're trying to learn through this course, then it means that you have to do what is before you to do at the level of thinking, knowing where you want to go, but at the same time being true and honest to yourself about where you are. I am so not into trying to please other folks. I'm so into trying to figure out what it is in me that needs to be, that I need to do, that I need to find, that I need to align with, so that I find my own stuff. And part of it means that I come to the table and I'm honest when I come to the table about my stuff. I come to the table and I talk about, where I am, not where you are, not what you think I need to do, but rather what I think I need to do. And so as I move from that place, I'm always in my divine right place. When we're not in our divine right place is when we're trying to put all these props up and all these faces up for people so that they'll like us or think higher of us than what hopefully than what they are displaying they thought about us in the first place. So so as I was taking, and let me get back to my analogy of my dinner, but as I was partaking of this meal, and I'm thinking about all the stuff that I could have done with this money rather than enjoying what I was receiving, the guy then turns around and he says to me, and I might have shared this with you guys, but he turns around and he says to me, well, so if you're worried about your bill, then how much is your bill? And I was like sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, and he just kind of pulls out this checkbook and he writes a check. Now this is some years ago. I've grown up since then. He writes this check. No, let me not say it that way. What he does is he signs a check and he pushes a blank check at me. And I looked at the blank check, I mean, with just a signature on there, nothing in the to line, nothing in the amount line, nothing in the box, just a simple signature. And I said, what's this for? I'm holding the check up. And he says, well, you said you had some bills to pay. And I said, well, yeah. I said, so how much can I write it for? And he says, well, write it for whatever you need, whatever your bills are. And I said, well, I said, I'm sitting there like I'm confused. This is totally like out of my element. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, well, so can we get like a ballpark? I mean, can you give me a limit? I mean, I wanted some kind of parameters other than just a signature on a check. And so as I'm sitting there and I'm kind of grappling this in my mind, he says, write it for what you want to write it for. And I thought, that doesn't compute. That doesn't compute. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, I got my thinking cap on and I'm thinking, okay, electric bill, gas bill, light, and am I just thinking about what I owe for this month? And so I was like, I said, what's my limit? And he says to me something that just kind of shocked me. I don't know why, but he said to me, he was like, Sandra, write it for whatever you want. You can't break me. That was his words. He says, you can't break me. Now, now, for some of you, you might have tried. But from the perspective that I was on that particular day, at that age, at that time, I didn't write it nearly enough, and not even to pay what I owed. But at the same time, I didn't even try or attempt to challenge what he had already said. So when he said, you can't break me, years later, I thought to myself, and I think to this day, that God says that to us all the time. You can't break me. Ask for what you want. And so, as I thought about the tree, as I thought about the musical chairs, as I thought about dating here in Cleveland, I kept thinking about who is it that told us that there were limits upon what we can have, what we can experience, and what we could do. Who told us there were limits? And 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 if we operate on a mindset that says that there is littleness, that there is a smallness, that there is a limit, if we operate on that mindset, we're not stepping into what God has set for us to do. So when it says that this thing it says in here, and I was reading out today out of this because I grabbed this thing because I wanted to do this thing on scarcity today. Let me read for a second off of the board, and then I'm going to read for you what it says over here in my book. Regis says, "In Him I live, move, and have my being. Greater is He who is in me than is in the world that I have created." Yes. It takes me back to old school. Okay, so Dwayne Dwyer, Regis goes on to say, Wayne Dwyer still hated to throw the soap away when it got really, really small. He realized he still at times thought from a place of scarcity from when he grew up poor. And so many of us still have those mindsets. And is it scarcity? Or is it this idea that we don't want to be wasteful? What is it? So do you pay more or less for the first part of the soap or the last part? So beautiful. God says, you can't break me. And yes, you have infinite supply already. And I haven't recognized it. I know that sometimes, many times, I don't operate from this idea of magnitude. I operate from the idea of littleness. And I realize that my ideas about littleness are not new. As a matter of fact, they were taught to us from the very small children that we were up until the adults that we have become. We have been taught about limitations. We have been taught about scarcity. We've been taught to budget, to save. We've been taught peekaboo. Um, now I see you and now I don't, as if things constantly come into our awareness and disappear. We've been taught about time and time management as if there is this only a small amount of time for us to work in, and you have to work all these hours, and then you've got to do chores all these hours, and then you've got to carve out some moments like today on a holiday to find some semblance of enjoyment out of this whole thing. We've been taught scarcity. But if we recognize God as all, the beginning, the end, and that the only moment that we have, the only thing that's real is now, if we recognize that and we exist in that precious moment of now, we'll give up all the fear of the past that told us what we couldn't do, what we couldn't have, what we couldn't be, all of those limiting ideas that we have learned before. We give all those up, let them all go, and just recognize that in this moment I have everything that I need. And to be honest with you, if I looked at it from sufficient unto this day, sufficient unto this day, I have all that I need. I might not even make pear preserves because this year my dad is in the hospital. This year, even though there are plenty of pears, I don't have time to do the things that I enjoy doing. I love opening up preserves in December and being able to put a piece of pear preserves on my biscuit around Christmas time. It's a gift that I give to me, but who's to say that I don't have time to do that this year? And so as I look at it from that standpoint that says that I see limitations, then what I know that I need to do is then turn around if I want to have a shift in my consciousness, a shift in my conversation, a shift in my way of being, then I need to turn around how I see things and how I operate in this world. So I kept saying to myself, I need to get out of that thing and recognize that this moment now is rich. This moment now I have what I need. This moment now I need to be fully present and enjoy it and come fully to the table. Ooh, Dove wrote something. So deceive yourself no longer that you lack. Acknowledge but that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. I have been mistaken. I have been mistaken. And all that I desire, everything is here and now. It is. It simply is. I am so fond of telling people that when I just look at my life, I see that I have lived a charmed and blessed life right now. I am living a charmed and blessed life. I know this. But it's funny when you get into certain arenas where people start to talk about the measure of their own personal worth and the perceived worth of others is based on titles, is based on income, is based on what kind of purse they carry or what kind of shoes they have on, what kind of car that they're driving. When you cast yourself into those arenas, then all of a sudden what you thought was a blessing, all of a sudden you start thinking like, well, maybe not so much so. But I ask myself all the time, would I rather have control of my time and my life, or would I rather control your opinion of what you think about me? And you know what? I could care less what people think about me, honestly. So there is a something that I wanted to share. Um, so out of this book, and it is out of this chapter on littleness, because I realize I'm running out of time. It says littleness is the offering you give yourself. You offer this in place of magnitude and you accept it. Everything in this world is little because it is a world made out of littleness, and a strange belief that littleness can content you. Mm. When you strive for anything in this world in the belief that it will bring you peace, you are belittling yourself and blinding yourself to your glory. Now, wonder if you recognized that this world, that all that you thought, all that you perceive is not even enough for you. Uh, you know what? Can I do this real quick? Let me see. I got like 2 minutes. Let me see if I can fit all this in 2 minutes. So this weekend, this past week, not only were my aunts in town, but my high school boyfriend was here. The guy that I dated all through high school. I must have met him when I was 15, 16. And I was in love. You know how that is. It was like I met this guy at the mall, and it was just, if you could believe in love at first sight, it was just love. And I dated him for years. I dated him all through high school. He graduated. He went into the Marines. I was here. I continued on through high school because he was 2 years ahead of me, I do believe. And so everything. He was my cup of tea, whatever. Anyway, years have gone past. We broke up back then, stuff, of course, at some point got ugly. We broke up. I lost touch with him and then found out he found me on Facebook some years later. No, actually, he found me on YouTube. Um, he found me on YouTube last year, contacted me and said he was living in Florida. Anyway, he came up and this past week, and when he came up, he wanted to see me, and sure enough, um, I was happy. I was happy that I could see him as well. And in that exchange, it was so interesting because I kept thinking to myself, okay, what is this all about? We went out, we had us a bite to eat. Um, it was good. There was a richness to it, memories, things that we shared. There was just so much to it. And it was so, like as I started thinking about all that there is, it's like for me, this idea of musical chairs was not something that I thought about even either back then or that I have a perception of now. I always think that I'm not going to sit down in a chair that's not right for me. I'm not going to do something that's not right for me. And if I am talking and thinking from a scarcity mentality, then I'll get the first thing. I'll say yes to the first thing. I'll jump into the first chair. I'll do whatever it is because I've got that scarcity mentality. You guys, it says that this kingdom is it is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It has been extended to you. There is nothing difficult about it. All it is that all of it is offered to you, and from the place of your magnitude there is nothing that is being withheld from you. What you don't have is because we perceive or because we get caught up in our own littleness or our smallness, and it's simply not the truth. So with this, I'm ending it with Paul. It says the immortality of staying asleep. Why wake up anyway? So it'll be his topic at 8 p.m. So you guys stay with him. Hey, anyway, it's time for me to go. Thank you so much. Find me on Facebook. I should be here on Wednesday. I don't know. All right, see you guys. Thanks. Whatever. I don't know. Um, that was what it was. And I appreciate you watching.